Ma'am, it is visible, ma'am. Ma'am, sorry, ma'am. Let me give the introduction and then you can start, ma'am.
I'm just not able. You can WhatsApp me because I'm not able to listen to you.
Let me give an introduction and then you can start, ma'am.
Okay, okay, fine. Yes, okay, so I'll just stop some.
Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon, all. On behalf of Untitled Arts and Science College, Ambattur, Chennai, IQAC, and Department of BCom, Accounting and Finance, in association with IOT Academy, we welcome the faculties of Untitled Arts and Science College, Chennai, and the participants joined here for the 5th session of National Level PDP on Basics of Research Methodology. Let me introduce the resource person of today's session, Dr. Pooja Chaturvedi Sharma. Dr. Pooja Chaturvedi Sharma is working as an assistant professor of management in APJ School of Management, Delhi. She has completed her master's degree in business administration and PhD in finance from Bharati Vidyapeeth Deemed University, New Delhi. She is also UGC NET JRF qualified. She has more than 10 years of experience in academics and research. Dr. Pooja has been a resource person in various FDPs, MDPs, and workshops covering various dimensions of accounting and finance, including investments and research methodology workshops based on SPSS and AMOS. She has been awarded Young Research Scholar Award under Samyuddin Memorial ICA Research Scholar Award. She is a lifetime member of All India Commerce Association. She is also an active reviewer in Scopus and UGC journals. We welcome you, ma'am, and with this, we hand over the session to Dr. Sharma. Ma'am, please.
Thank you so much. So before we actually start with the session, I thank you all of you for being here, for giving time to these sessions, and giving the will to learn something new. So I can see good number. I can see 42 present here. So this is what we're going to talk today. We're going to talk about only the numbers, their interpretation, their relevance, their existence, why, how, when, with whom, to whom, right? So this is all what we're going to talk about. So without taking much time, I'll just start with my presentation. See, as I'll be on slide share mode, so I will not be able to see your questions. But if you have any queries, you whenever you will have a query, please do write that in chat box. And once I'll be done with the session, I'll take the queries one on one, right? So don't keep it to your heart. Just feel free to write in the chat box. But yes, if there is any voice related issue, any video related issue, any PPT related issue, then you can stop me and just let me know, right? Because once I'll be on slide share, I'll not be able to see anything. I'll be technically talking to myself only because it's only me and the PPT that I'll be able to see, right? I hope I'm clear to everyone, right? Yes, just show me a thumbs up.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, okay, fine. Okay, so we're gonna talk about data analysis and interpretation. This is, as ma'am has just told us, this is your day 5. God bless you all for working all these 4 days really hard. Today, I will not directly jump to data analysis and interpretation. First, we will talk a little about what is data and how data and information are different. What is data analysis, what is interpretation, and how analysis and interpretation are different. Then we will talk about various types of data analysis, various methods which are available for data interpretation, and why data analysis and interpretation collectively are important for us in the form of research, right? So when we talk about research or in any other form, when we talk about data, right? So irrespective of any kind of industry, data has become the driving force that furthers the development of a variety of technologies. When you talk about the term data, it has been driven from the Latin word called datum, which actually means something given. Whether it has some relevance or not, that doesn't make any difference. But yes, whenever something is given, it is in the form of numbers, it is data, right? So data is basically raw, unorganized, unanalyzed, uninterpreted, uninterrupted, and unrelated when used in different contexts. For example, facts and statistics that are gathered by the researchers these days for their analysis can collectively be called data. Data, in essence, lacks its informative fervor and relatively renders itself to be meaningless unless given a purpose or direction to acquire its significance. So, but when the data is analyzed, structured, and given composure or context to make it useful, we find information. Information is basically, generated from some Middle and Old French roots, which meant the act of informing. The term information has been driven from the Middle and Old French roots, which means the act of informing, mostly used in the context of knowledge, instruction, and education. So, in essence, information is systematic, filtered, and useful. Data is a collection. We all have talked about data. So data is actually a collection of details in the form of either figures, text, symbols, descriptions, or mere observations of entities, events, or things with the potential to be analyzed and drawn inferences from. So they are raw, which requires rendering to acquire meaningful information. So definitely we all know that data is of two types, primary and secondary. When you talk about primary data is simply the data which is collected from directly from the source of generation, right? So if some data has been generated by me, or I am the only source of having that data, that is called primary data. Secondary data is the data which is collected from some other source, the data that was already collected by someone else for using in some other context, but because that data fits into my purpose also, my research objectives also, so I am using the same data. Now, primary data means, again, I'll explain. Primary data means, for example, when you collect data from the respondents, when you get the questionnaires filled, so you're getting the information directly from the horse's mouth. If you want to know about the investor perception and you're talking directly to the investor, then definitely investor is the first source of information from which you're getting the data. So that is why it is called primary data. Whereas, for example, in the case of secondary data, if you use any company's balance sheet, if you use any other company's some other data set, then definitely it is the secondary data for you. Why? Because it was primary data for the company itself, because company prepared that balance sheet, they framed that balance sheet, they made that balance sheet from the information that they already had, and they made it for themselves. Now, as they're making it public, so it is in the public domain. So whatever information is available in public domain becomes the secondary data, because that is freely available for anyone to use according to their context, wherever it is fitting into. Qualitative and quantitative data. When you talk about primary data, whenever you talk about emotions, whenever you talk about perception, whenever you talk about feelings, something which cannot be quantified directly. If I say I have a very strong feeling that, this time my students are going to score more than 90%. So I have a very strong feeling. That is qualitative data. Unless I say that I have a feeling that 80% I feel that my students are going to score 90% this time. That is the quantification of my quality, right? That is the quantification of my emotions. So unless and until you're not able to quantify your emotions, your perceptions, your cognitive thoughts, that is all qualitative data, right? And qualitative means,
sorry
yes.
to interrupt, ma'am. Can you start presenting the slides, ma'am?
Sorry?
Can you start presenting the slides, ma'am?
I am already sharing the slide. Is it not moving? See, is it
No,
moving?
ma'am. No, ma'am, it is not moving, ma'am.
It is not moving. Okay, I'll just share it again.
Sorry to interrupt, ma'am.
No problem. No problem. That is very, very important. See, is it moving now?
Yes, ma'am, it is moving now, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. So if you don't mind, can I just keep it like this? Maybe because when I go to slide share, there is some issue. Will that
No
work?
issues, ma'am. No issues, ma'am. I can go on like this, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
So when we talk about quantitative data, quantitative means something which is already expressed in number forms. You use any sales figures, you use any profit figures, any earning per share figures, anything which is already quantified in number terms. That is all quantitative data. But yes, we do have the softwares which are used these days to convert the qualitative data into quantity, right? So that whenever we interpret, when we give the results, when we give the interpretation of those research results, making it easily understandable for the readers. Definitely, because whenever you give a wide statement mentioning that I have a very strong feeling, whereas you say that I have a feeling that 80% I have 80% feeling that 90% my students will score, right? So that makes your statement, that makes your research results more precise. And the closer your results, the precise your results are, definitely better citations, better usage will be there of your research work. So always make sure that whether you work on qualitative data or quantitative data, make sure that eventually you convert everything to numbers, because people are more able to relate to numbers as compared to the open-ended statements, right? Okay, let's move to next, secondary data. Secondary data is, as we discussed, it is the data which has already been collected by someone else for their own purpose. Now we can also use it because that data also fits into our research objectives. Internal data and external data. Internal data means something which is already there with me. For example, if in my company, I am coming from finance department and I want to use some of the sales figures. I want to use some of the projections that have been made by the marketing department. So although it is internal data within the organization, but it is secondary for me because it was primarily made by the marketing department. It was primarily collected by the sales department. So for me, it is secondary data, but for the organization, it is the internal data. When we talk about external data is something which you collect from outside world. Today, if I use, say, Hindustan Lever's balance sheet, today, if I use Google's balance sheet, if I use Infosys balance sheets or their income statements or their cash flow statements, so that is the secondary data, number one, and the external as well, because that data is not made by me or my organization, right? So that is external data in the form of secondary data. I hope it's clear to everyone. If you have any doubt, you can just write down in chat box. Next is information. We've talked about data. Data is something which has no relevance in itself unless it is linked to something. It is taken into some consideration. It is taken into some context, and the information is generated out of it. So information is data collated to drive meaningful inferences according to its contextual requirements. Information is structured, processed, and presented with assigned meaning that improves the reliability of data acquired. Information also ensures that there remains no uncertainty or undesirability. Just taking a small example, there is a data, right, which has something with reference to the rainfall that happened in USA in the year 2019-20, and same year, number of children born in India. Although these are itself two different sets of data. Are they giving any information? if you try to link them, you need to have, if you want to generate some information out of it, you need to have some context. You need to have some objectives, right? So I say, what was the rainfall in USA in the year 1920? And what is the number of kids born in India in the same year? That doesn't make any sense to me, right? But if I try to link it in some way, I filter it on the basis of the Indians who were there, females who were expecting kids there, they got pregnant in US, there were a lot of rains, and how many flights got delayed, how many flights got cancelled due to heavy rains in US, and eventually how many Indian citizens who wanted to deliver their kids in India could do that, could travel to India and do that in India, right? So if you try to somehow link things, only then you can get the information from data. Otherwise, if you just see this data and these two different data sets, in itself, they will not be able to give you any information, right? So data and information is very important for us to understand that not every data is going to give us some information, but yes, information is dependent on the type of data that we have. If we have the correct data, we will definitely generate the right information. If we have fudged data, if we have cooked data, then definitely the information that will generate out of it will also not be correct. So information can't exist without data, but data doesn't rely on the information. Data as an input goes through a filtration process, as I just gave you this example of filtering the data and then picking up what kind of information you want from that US rain and the number of kids born in India, followed by a meaningful organization to generate output or information. Data doesn't deliver into species specifics, since then there is rarely any relevance scattered amongst heaps of data unless processed. You may have, thousands and thousands of data lying with you. Unless you use that data for any information generation purpose, the data is useless. Whereas information is particular with correlation to the inferences derived. What do you want to know out of it? Only then you will be able to correlate the data, correlate the numbers that are given to you, and then you will be able to get the information. Okay, so this was about data and how data and information are linked, how data and information are different. Not all data that is given to us is information, but yes, information is entirely dependent on the type of data that we get, right? So I hope this is clear to everyone. Any doubt? Any questions, anyone? I am not able to. Okay, I can see this. Okay, so we have two hands raised, Sarita Pandey and Jamil Bashir. So yes, you can ask your questions if you want to. Sarita, do you want to ask any question?
Jamil sir has posted in the chat box, ma'am. Can I read, ma'am?
Sorry?
Jamil sir has posted his question in the chat box, ma'am.
In chat box, okay.
Can I read, ma'am?
Yeah, sure.
Yes. Ma'am, you told that internal data is the data which is already available there. Doesn't mean that it is also a secondary data.
Yes, definitely. That's what I was saying. That internal data will be secondary. That the example that I gave clearly specifies that data which is within my organization but collected by some other department will be secondary for me. I am from finance background. I need to prepare income statement for my company. So for that, I need to know about some other expenses which were incurred by marketing department. I need to know some expenses which were incurred by operations department. So when I collect that data from these departments, all of that is internal, but it is secondary for me. Whereas if I am from operations department and whatever expenses were incurred by my department, then it will be primary data for me because it is the first hand data prepared by me. So yes, secondary data can be internal as well as external, but not all secondary data will be internal, because data which is prepared by some other departments of your organization will be secondary for you because it was not prepared by you, it was prepared by someone else for some other purposes. The data which is prepared by you, by your department, will be internal and private. I hope I am clear. Jameel, is it fine? Okay, so you can respond at your time. Okay, so is my PPT visible?
Yes, ma'am, it is visible.
Okay. Now let's start with data analysis and interpretation. Are data analysis and interpretation the same? No, they're not. Definitely not. So let's just have a quick look on the differences between data analysis and interpretation, and then we'll move towards their segregations. So as the name itself tells us, data analysis, it is simply the analysis of the data. It is simply uncovering the patterns and trends which are hidden in the data on the basis of some analytical techniques. Whereas interpretation is the process of giving meaning to that data. You've uncovered some patterns, you've uncovered some trends, but what about this? What does these trends, what do these patterns tell us? So when you try to dig out the meanings out of those trends and patterns, that is your data interpretation. I'll just take you through another slide. Yes, just have a look on this slide. You can see that, these are some data analysis charts which have been made. You can see some different graphs which are lying in blue, red, green. You can see some bars made. You can see a pie chart which is there. But, just these are the results of data analysis. These are the graphical representations, pictorial representations of your data analysis. But what do you know about this? What meaning, what inferences that these data give us, these pictures give us, that will be only dig out when we do the interpretation part. If you understand, if you know what does this blue indicates, red indicates, green indicates, how does these lines move, what does these bars show to you, what does these graphs show, what these different combinations of colors in this pie chart depict, only then you'll be able to understand. Otherwise, they are simply nice colored drawings which have been made with multiple colors and showing some data which is of no understanding to us, right? So this is the example of data analysis, the presentation part of it. And once you start digging deep into this data, this analysis, that will be the interpretation. When you talk about chronology, when you talk about the sequence, yes, definitely data analysis is done first and interpretation is followed by that. When you talk about methods and the types, there are 5 types to it of data analysis: descriptive, diagnostic. We will talk about all of these types in detail. And when you talk about interpretation, interpretation has only 2 types: quantitative and qualitative. Now, why you need them? Why you need to do data analysis and interpretation? To summarize, condense data in a comprehensible and usable form. For further advanced analytics and prediction, you need to do data analysis. But simply stopping your work on analysis is not going to help. Even for, if you want that your paper should be accepted in a good journal, right? So analysis is definitely important. The kind of softwares you've used, the kind of data analysis techniques you've used, that has, relevance for the reviewers. But yes, for a paper to be accepted in a highly rated journal, interpretation is the interpretation is the core of the paper that binds it. Interpretation is the core that makes your paper, a level up than the other papers which have been submitted to the journal. If your interpretation is strong, if your actually looked into some aspect of the analysis which none of your co-authors or none of your peer publishers, peer researchers have been able to pick up, that is where you make a difference. Right? So data interpretation is the core of any kind of research work, whether it's a research paper, if you're working on any research project, if you're working on your thesis. Make sure that you give a different angle. You know, we always say that we researching something. But what is actually research? Are we actually doing the researching entirely from the scratch? No, we're not doing that. Definitely not. But where you, and whenever you submit a paper to good journals like from Elsevier or something, they always in the abstract itself, they ask you about the novelty of the paper. What is the novel contribution? So this novel contribution may come through some good new idea that you've generated. But if you've not generated any new idea, even if you've taken any inspiration from an existing paper, but if you've taken a newer dimension, a different dimension through your interpretation, that will also be a new angle to your paper, right? So that is the relevance, that is the importance of the interpretation, why it is very, very important, why it is the core of your research. And why I'm talking about analysis? Because if your analysis is done well, if your analysis is done correctly, then only you'll be able to give a new direction, a different direction to your interpretation. If analysis has been done wrong, if you've taken the wrong data, if you've applied the wrong research technique, analysis technique, then definitely wrong results followed by wrong interpretations. So that's why you need to do this, and that's why you need to do it correctly, right? So we've already discussed this, that why and how these pictorial representations, beautiful looking pictorial representations, can be useless for us if they do not suffice to the requirement of our data interpretation. So just have a look on the data analysis process and the interpretation process, how it goes. First of all, define why you need data analysis. Why means your objectives. You know, always make sure, although it is little off the track, but it is very, very important, because whenever I review papers, I see that budding researchers, at times, they lack the sequence. They lack the chronology in the papers. So you can just note it down that first of all, you have some, you know, rough idea of what you want to do. So whether it's a thesis or it's a research paper, you have a topic, roughly framed topic. Do the good research work, do the good literature review from some good research journals. On the basis of literature review, find out the gaps. Must frame the research questions. And from the research questions, develop your research objectives. Literature review followed by framing of research questions based on the research gaps. On the basis of research questions, frame your research objectives. On the basis of research objectives, frame your hypothesis. Clearly definable hypothesis, clearly measurable hypothesis, and then do your data analysis. After data analysis, for data analysis, you need to collect the data, which is the second step. In step one, define why you need data analysis. This is going to be your research questions, research objectives, and your hypothesis. Step two will be collecting the data. Step three will be cleaning the data through unnecessary data. This we will talk about in the next step, which is data screening. Step four is analyzing the data, and finally interpreting the results and applying them as per the requirement. So step three tells us about clean through unnecessary data. So what is cleaning? Data cleaning. We call it data screening as well. So once you have collected the data, do not put the entire data directly into SPSS or MOS or R or any software, right? Just have a look on the data. Have a look on the beauty of data, how nicely you've collected. Where you see, when you do data screening, this will help you to understand the seriousness of your response. How? Number one. One is C for the missing data. Missing data in the sense you had, say, 20 statements, but because you could not make the questions compulsory, or you did not make the questions compulsory, so some of the respondents have left some statements and they have not responded to them. So the majority of them have responded around 12, 13 statements out of 20. So definitely, if all 300 respondents have not responded to all 20 statements, you will not be able to understand that what kind of perception, what kind of thought process they have regarding your statements or your research objectives. So definitely look for missing data, and then there are some techniques through which we compensate for this data, right? So definitely there should not be single missing data in your research, right? Second is look for multivariate outliers. Outliers are the values which go out of your range. For example, you've made a 5-point Likert scale, right? You're collecting a questionnaire data on the basis of 5-point Likert scale. So minimum score can be 1. Any respondent, what minimum value we can give you 1, and what maximum value we can give you 5. Right? But when you were looking for the outliers, you found that some of them have given value of 0. Some have given, that can be typo error also when you were filling in the data. So, because sometimes if you collect the data in hard copy, so you have to feed it into the Excel, right? So, some of them have filled it as 6, some have it as 7. So, these outliers are going to deviate your responses. Right? So maximum value must be 5 and minimum value must be 1, and rest of the values should lie between 1 and 5. So you must be sure that you take out on the basis of the outliers, and the technique that we use in confirmatory factor analysis for this is Mahalanobis distance, D2, which tells us that centroid, how far are the values from the mean. So if values are, in between the range of 1 to 5, all of them will be in the same range. Any value which is going farther away from 5, definitely that will be reflected in the table. There is a table for it, and there is a graphical representation for the same also. So through that also you can pick up. Third is you need to check the data normality. When we talk about data normality, it is about the skewness of the data, the normal curve that we always prepare. Although yes, talking in the real sense, data that you collect from respondents is usually not normal. Because people will have different opinions, people will have different, predictions for something. So data will not fall into normal. But if you have a secondary data, you're working on some sales figures, you're working on some purchase figures, you're working on some profit figures. So there you need to work on the, but yes, we do work on the normality of the data which is collected through a questionnaire or a schedule as well. So yes, how you will check that? You will check that through the skewness values of kurtosis and critical ratio. And the when you talk about kurtosis index, it is there we use the value of Z. The kurtosis index value should be less than 7. We say data is fine, data is normal. And when you talk about Z values, then yes, the values should be in the center. They should not be inclined. They should not be either on the extreme positive or extreme negative. Then the data is skewed, and we do not want a skewed data. We want the majority of the data to lie in the center place. Last is multicollinearity. Multicollinearity means the overlapping of the statements. It means that your data is not able to show any exclusive discrepancy in the dependent variable. Means the statements which you have taken are all talking about the same thing. If you have taken, say, you want to talk about 4 different factors. You want to talk about risk, you want to talk about returns, you want to talk about fund characteristics, you want to talk about fund manager. But when you did data analysis, or you did data screening, or you did VIF test, which is variable inflation factor, which is done through multiple regression, VIF values shows that no, your data, your statements that you've taken are not talking about four different factors. They're not talking about four different variables. They're talking about majorly one thing. That can be any one of them, right? So majorly one thing should not be discussed, because that is not the point for which you're working out. You're working for four different variables. You want to talk about risk, you want to talk about return, you want to talk about fund characteristics, fund manager. So all these four pointers, all these four references, all these four constructs should be clearly identifiable through your data. And how that will be clearly identifiable? If your data has no multicollinearity issues, right? So the whole point of including this here was, whenever you do data analysis, this should be the first step. First, you should do data screening, followed by these four steps, and then actually move to your data analysis. Any questions till here? Let me just have a look. Anyone, you can just raise your hand or write your question in the chat box. Okay. So let's go back. Let's have a look on data analysis. Now, we were talking about 5 types of data analysis. So let's have a look on them one by one. Descriptive, as the name itself tells us, it is describing something. It is describing what has happened. Actually, what is the level of sales, or what type of respondents you have. Majority respondents fall into which age category. So whenever for any research, if you just want to have descriptive analysis, or if you have a descriptive research, so the research techniques that you will be majorly using will be central tendency, like mean, mode, median, right? Some measure of dispersion like skewness, kurtosis, all that will be used, because here you are not interested in knowing why, how to correct it, what should be the next measure. You simply want to know what has happened. During the COVID times, government was working on descriptive analysis initially. They wanted to know how many people have fallen sick due to COVID-19. How many people or how many deaths have been there in Delhi, all over India, all over world due to COVID-19. So they were just simply trying to know how much, what has happened, what age category of people are majorly affected. When there was wave 3, we were majorly talking about that it is affecting the kids. When there was wave 2, it has affected everyone, right? So when you just want to talk about what, you are going to use descriptive analysis, and the measures will be focused on central tendency and measures of dispersion. Diagnostic. Now it is the diagnostic. You want to diagnose why it has happened. You know what has happened, right? You know that there were so many deaths in wave 2. Now you want to diagnose it. You want to know why there were so many deaths. So when you did that, when you dig the hole deep, you want to know that yes, there was a problem with the infrastructure. Hospitals were not prepared. There were no proper ventilation systems available in the hospitals, right? So you know the reasons. So in diagnostic analysis, you work on the root cause of the problem. You try to work it out on the reasons due to which this particular problem has occurred. Third is the predictive analysis. Predictive means you're predicting something, what is likely to happen. For example, in your company, you have a capital structure of, I hope you people do understand when I talk about finance examples. Your capital structure has a 60-40 ratio, means your capital structure has 60% contribution coming from equity and 40% contribution coming from debt, for which you have to pay regular interest, which is an expense for the company, right? So your company thought that what if we change the capital structure? What will happen? If we change it to 70-30, if we change it to 50-50, what kind of changes will happen? One example. Another example, you have been promoting your product only in, say, metro cities only, right? So definitely the expense was different. the customer who was looking at the advertisement, who were opting for a product were different. Now you thought, let's expand our market a little more and let's approach to tier 2 cities as well. So this is how you will do it. You will actually not directly go and start doing it in the market. First, you will do it on papers. You will do it through financial modeling. You will do it through some simulation techniques. You will do it through some other predictive analysis based on softwares, where you will put the data. You will put the data of 50% equity, 50% debt, 70% equity, 30% debt, whatever expenses you've been doing. On the basis of that, you will generate, if you will enter in the tier 2 cities market, what kind of expenses you will do, what kind of customers exist there, will they pick up your product or not. So actually directly going to the market, these things are done beforehand, and predictive analysis is done first on papers, and on the basis of the results of this analysis, you go to the market, right? Next is prescriptive analysis. How to make it happen. Predictive means you have predicted and you got the results that yes, tier 2 markets are good for us. So we can go for tier 2 marketing, right? Next is prescriptive. How you want to approach the market, what should be your strategy, right? So this is majorly result oriented. What you are going to use social media marketing, you are going to use big hoardings, you are going to use some verbal word of mouth promotion for your product. You're going to give some freebies to the people who are there so that they can use your product, and then they can come back and buy the product if they like. So prescriptive analysis basically talks about how your prediction can be brought into reality. How what you've thought in the predictive analysis that this is the level, this is the target that you want to achieve. This prescriptive analysis will help you to reach to that level. Last is cognitive analysis. Cognitive analysis is simply when you mimic, when you try to work as the human brain works. All of us are seeing these days how artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning algorithms have taken up a huge control over a lot of things happening around us. We've seen that during COVID time, there were even robots who were serving, because there were so many patients and staff was overburdened, staff was less. So we've seen that there were robots who were working in place of the serving staff. In place of the nurses, they were giving the food to the patients, right? So that is there, that if you want to work in on the basis of these artificial intelligence, deep learning algorithms, how you do it. And even if, when we talk about real-time data cognitive analysis, whether it's Zomato or Swiggy or your Ola, Ubers, when you book, if you chat, then real-time chatting, that real-time response to your query, when it is given, it is by using artificial intelligence, and it is cognitive analysis. That is what we are already using, right? So I hope these 5 types of data analysis are clear to everyone. Descriptive tells us what has happened. Diagnostic tells us why it has happened. Predictive tells us where we want to reach, what we want to do. Prescriptive tells us how to achieve that, and cognitive means when we try to imbibe, when we try to imitate how human brain works. So any questions, you can write in chat box. I'm waiting. Any questions? Anyone? Okay. So let's get back to our PPT. Okay. Yeah. So just something very, very important that you need to know. Data analysis in the research process. See, how does it go? We will take it as a proper way that will come from research review. We'll go to research design, where we'll derive the concepts, methods, and variables. Then we'll have some data, some events to observe. We'll collect the data on the basis of that, and then we'll move forward. We'll move upward to data analysis. And through this data analysis, we will find out the results, the findings, and the records. And on the basis of this data analysis, we will further take it to our discussion, our interpretation, through which we will claim values, some knowledge, and some explanations, right? So data analysis, from data collection to data analysis, when you move, it is for your internal validity, because whatever you've collected, you're going to analyze it. Now, what you've analyzed and the interpretation that you drive out of it needs some external validation. You know, whatever you're writing, if it is not getting accepted by any kind of journal, whatever you're writing, if it is not heard by people, if it is not read by people, it means there is no external validation of your work, right? So whatever you do needs to have some external validation, because all of us are working for the research industry. All of us are working for the upcoming researchers. All of us are working for our upcoming generations, that if we write good papers, if we do good research, then definitely in future our research will be used by them. So if it has to be used by them, if you want other people to read your work, then make sure it gets internal validity followed by external validation. Do not rush your work. Do not think that you are going to publish 20 papers in a year. Don't do that. Publish good quality papers with less number of authors, and refer to some good levels of interpretation of your work, through which you can create your niche in your own industry, right? In your own domain. So there are various techniques for analyzing the data, which are linear regression, logistic, cluster, variance, time series analysis, factor analysis, principal component analysis, sentiment analysis. We use these days a lot of softwares which are working on qualitative analysis. You know, NVivo is one of the most prominently used software, which is used for analyzing even the qualitative data as well. You know, you can just upload an interview, and on the basis of that interview, you can analyze, you can write a complete paper. You can upload a video, and on the basis of that video, you can get the interpretations, right? Get the analysis done. Interpretation, you have to do it yourself, but yes, you can get the analysis done. So there are a lot of techniques that are available, but yes, you need to refer to your own objectives, hypothesis, research questions, on the basis of which you will pick up. Next part of it is data interpretation. Data interpretation, as this pie chart itself tells us, that yes, there are different colors, there are different domains which are there in the data when we got the analysis done. But we have to bifurcate all the domains, and we need to pick the parts which are most relevant for us. We have to focus which is required by our research objectives. We have to focus on the points which are important for our research questions, which are going to answer our research questions. On the basis of that, we will do the interpretation. So yes, we all know that interpretation is the process of assigning meaning to the processed and analyzed data. It is used to explain numerical data points and categorical data points, which require different methods. So in data interpretation, techniques are different depending on the type of data. So for just the steps, and then we'll move to the techniques. When you talk about the steps are basically develop the findings, of course, develop your conclusions, and develop your recommendations. How these three will be done once you have the correct data analysis with you. On the basis of those analysis, find out your findings. See, all these three things are part of your interpretation actually. Out of the analyzed data, first develop your findings. Out of those findings, give a conclusion, and on the basis of that conclusion, give some further recommendations for future results, or some result-oriented approaches can be used. So findings, conclusions, and recommendations. So when we talk about the techniques for data interpretation, there are two techniques: qualitative and quantitative. Just have a look on these figures. See, these are different figures. Figure on my extreme left shows gross sales of takeout, then per customer transaction, then daily index statistics of takeout and direct sales stores, then funnel chart of takeout sales, then complaint ratio, then customer conversion ratio, then refund ratio, and daily selling index statistics of learner stores. So all these data analysis figures are here, as I've already shown you in the earlier chart, but simply looking at them doesn't give me much information. I need to look at it with reference to my objective. What I want to know through these figures. They look beautiful. These figures look amazing. But unless and until they're not able to give answers to my research questions, they're of no use to me. So when we talk about qualitative and quantitative, in qualitative, majorly your data will be nominal, ordinal, or binary. Whereas in quantitative, it will be discrete or continuous. In qualitative, nominal data is something which has no sequence. You know, when you talk about gender, male and female, right? So if I give numbers 1 and 2, I say females will be represented by 1 and males will be represented by 2. So that doesn't make a difference. You know, that doesn't sound like females are better than male. Females comes at number 1 and males are behind them. No, here number 1 and number 2 doesn't make any difference. They are just the numbers for identification. So that is nominal data. But same thing done in the case of ordinal data will definitely show the order, will definitely show the priority, will definitely, if it is the ordinal data and I give 1 to females and 2 to males, it will surely make a difference and tell me that yes, males have been posed as number 1 and females have been posed as number 1 and males have been posed as number 2. Binary means simple when there are 2 choices, yes or no, pass or fail, right? When there are only 2 choices. And quantitative, discrete data means a data which has finite values and cannot be subdivided into further segments. For example, if I say 30 units, I say in January my sale was 30 units, in February my sale was 56 units, in March my sale was 93 units. So this is discrete because these data are not linked. 30 is in itself a separate number, 53 is in itself a separate number, 96 in itself is a separate number. Whereas when I talk about continuous data is something which is continuing, which is not discrete, which is not unrelated. If I talk about my age, it is continuously increasing. Definitely, whatever my age is today, it is 1 day more than my age yesterday. And whatever my age is today, it is definitely 1 day lesser than my age tomorrow. So it is continuous. When you talk about height of a child, which is at the age of 2 years, is definitely linked to the height at the age of 7 years. Somehow, right? 7 years, the height is linked to the height of the child at the age of 10 years, right? So continuous is when data is linked and discrete is when data is isolated, but yes, it has a separate specific numeric value which has a meaning. Whereas in nominal, although the data has specific numbers, but they do not have any standing, they do not have any meaning. We've talked about quantitative, we've talked about qualitative. Yes, finally, the last slide, importance of data analysis. Why it is important? Because it helps us to make informed decisions. If you have correctly done data analysis and rightly done interpretation. So whatever you have analyzed, whatever you have interpreted, you will be able to take it further through correct decision making. Identification of trend and forecasting. Definitely, just have a look on this slide. See, you can see these daily index statistics. So these are the statistics that are telling us how these different values are moving. Just have a look on this funnel chart. You can have a look that, how it is simply getting shrinked. Just have a look on these daily selling index statistics of learner stores. You can see that how the values are high and low. When they are increasing, when one value is increasing, how proportionately the other value is decreasing or not, right? So yes, definitely it helps us to understand the trends and take the future actions. It is cost efficient. Why? Because you have something in written with you. Definitely nobody remembers what happened 3 years back. You cannot remember each and every data. So if you have things in writing with you, if you have things in the form of analysis, some pictorial graphics are there, some interpretations are there, then you'll be able to relate more to it, and you will be able to better interpret it and use it for your future decision making. And definitely it gives you a clear insight. It helps you to analyze, it helps you to understand what you are up to. You did predictive analysis, you did prescriptive analysis. So predictive and prescriptive have basically led a way, have helped you in a way to reach to your future aspirations. And that you could do because you had good data analysis and interpretation, right? So I will simply just close this by saying, by giving a quote by Brian Herbert. The capacity to learn is a gift. The ability to learn is a skill. The willingness to learn is a choice. And I'm glad that all of you made a choice, gave 1 hour, one precious hour of your time to me and to this FDP. And thank you for being part of this journey. Thank you so much. So the session is open for questions now. You can share your questions.
The session is open for discussion now. You can post your questions in the chat box, or you can unmute and interact with the resource person. Ma'am is there to help you. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Any questions? You can write them in chat box.
Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening.
Ma'am, this is Dr. Shanti.
Yeah.
Ma'am, I just wanted to know, like, do we need to do all the validity checking, ma'am? Like, whenever we go for some paper writing, is it mandatory to go for all the validity checks, ma'am?
It is always good, because that gives an authentication to your work. As a reviewer, when I'm reading your work, I know that it is not that you've just picked up your data and put it in the software. You have filtered the data, you have checked the data for all the discrepancies, you have removed all the discrepancies, and you have used the final data. So yes, I always insist, it is not mandatory, but yes, that it is always good to do data scraping.
Ma'am, which type of validity test should we go, ma'am?
We've talked about these 4 types of data screening. Are we talking about data screening, or we're talking about validity test?
I'm talking about validity test, ma'am.
Okay. Yes, whenever you do a questionnaire thing, then definitely you must go for validity test. It is mandatory. It is mandatory. There is no choice in it. And I always suggest that you should go for content validity check. You should, where you refer to some academicians of repute of a particular area, you refer to some corporates of that particular area, and you sit down with them and show them your questionnaire, so that whatever feedback they give you with reference to the content, they give you feedback with reference to the presentation of the statements, and make the required changes. Then definitely you will go for discriminant validity analysis. Discriminant validity will give you the validity check on how correctly your statements are identifying, how your constructs are clearly defining what they meant to, how discriminant they are. If I'm talking about risk, I'm talking about return, I'm talking about fund manager. So are there any overlapping statements in them? Or risk is talking about risk only clearly, return is talking about return clearly? Is it like that? So that is very, very important for you to at least do these 2 types of rest there are 5 types of validity check. At least do these 2 types of validity check: content and discriminant.
Ma'am, if the values, in case of discriminant validity, if the values of AVE are not normal, then what we should do, ma'am? Should we continue the research again? How we can improve that improve those values, ma'am?
Okay. If it is not clear, then go to your Cronbach alphas value.
Reliability, ma'am.
Go to your reliability.
For reliability.
Value. Yeah, Cronbach alphas values, and see how your Cronbach alpha values are coming up. If it is amazing, then definitely you need to go back to data screening. If the value of your convex alpha is somewhere close to 0.53, right, 0.06, if it is close to 6, then definitely see, are there any statements which are theoretically not supported and they are still a part of your questionnaire and making the reliability of your questionnaire go down. I'm repeating.
Ma'am, mine it was 0.9, ma'am. Somewhere 0.89. So it was good only, but still my discriminant validity values, they were not within that normal, ma'am.
Go to data screening. Do the data screening.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, thank you very much.
This data screening will help you at this level. If you have any issues, we can connect later on also regarding this. No essence.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions?
Ma'am, one participant has asked you to share the 26th slide.
I'll share the entire PPT. Share here or with them?
No, they're asking to share now, ma'am. To share the 26th slide.
Okay. Just a second. I'll just check.
Ma'am, if possible, can you share your PPT, ma'am? It was really very helpful, ma'am.
I'll do that.
Okay. Thank you very much.
This is slide number 26.
Aarti, ma'am, do you have any queries in the slide, ma'am? Because you have asked for 26th slide.
Yeah.
Do you have any queries, ma'am? You can ask ma'am. She's there to help you. Ma'am, they are asking you the details of the software that you have used for 22nd slide.
No, that was a secondary data slide. So that was already available with me. So I have not prepared that slide. I will share that. Yeah. But these slides we usually made with Excel also. Excel is also is helpful in making these kind of slides.
Any other questions? You can post your questions in chat box also.
Sarita, you've raised your hand. Do you want to ask anything?
Sarita, ma'am, do you have any question, ma'am?
Okay. Fine. No answers.
I think there are no questions from their side, ma'am. Shall we wind up, ma'am?
Okay. Thank you, everyone. God bless all of you. Take care.
On behalf of Untitled Arts and Science College, Ambattur, Chennai, IQAC, and Department of BCom, Accounting and Finance, in association with IOT Academy, we thank Dr. Pooja Chaturvedi, ma'am, for the enlightening and enriching session. We thank you once again, ma'am, for the amazing presentation. We thank you for enhancing our understanding with your commendable presentation, ma'am. We thank you very much for your efforts, ma'am. We thank the faculties of Untitled Arts and Science College and the participants for joining the session today. Thank you all. Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you very much for your efforts, ma'am. Kindly fill the feedback form using the link that has been posted in the chat box. Thank you all. Have a great evening.